everyone. I would like to welcome you on our first webinar. The topic of today's webinar is exploring physiological and mechanical condition of urban trees. We are very excited that you made time to join us today. And my name is Alexandra. I'm from Adbian marketing team, and I will guide you through this experience. First, I would like to share with you today's schedule so you know what's coming up. So we will start with our first guest, Kamil Witkos, and his presentation, The New Chapter in Tree Assessment, Understanding the Importance of Revised Core Parameters. He will be followed with Ondrej Kolarik's presentation named Unlocking Insights Through 3D Scanning, Adbian's Vision for Arboriculture. And if you would have any questions or clarifications, don't hesitate to type them into Q&A. And stay tuned for the end of the webinar because we will share with you the next webinar's topic and our guest. So stay tuned for the end. And I think I will share now more of the information for the webinar. Also, don't forget to stay in contact with us on social media. We have Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and we are sharing there every event detail and many more interesting posts. So you can see this QR code and connect through it with us. Okay. I think there is no need for me to speak any longer, and I would like to introduce our first guest, Kamil Witkos. So Kamil is a managing director of the Institute Drzewa. He's certified veteran tree expert, co-author, and editor of articles and publications on tree management and diagnostics, and of the tree cutting and care standards, the tree inspection and diagnostic standards. He is also a member of key organizations shaping European tree standards, such as European Arboricultural Council, International Tree Expert Group, Polish Dendrological Society, and British Arboricultural Association.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on this lovely afternoon. It's quite hot over here. We are just in the middle of summer harvest. Just outside of our window, there's a harvester going back and forth. So yeah, it's nice to see some familiar names. I'm sorry I can't see you. Yeah, today I'm gonna be talking about physiological condition and mechanical integrity of trees. This is the exact title of two parameters that are presented in European Arboricultural European Tree Assessment Standard, which I'm gonna be talking about in a few minutes. About Tree Institute in Poland, we started working in 2019. We are based in Poland, and we organize trainings, provide advice, but also in a number of projects we looked not only at trees and tried to understand trees, but we looked at how people work with trees, and we analyzed competencies and training programs. So I will be briefly mentioning also some of the thoughts, some of the results of our previous work. I think most of you are familiar with European arboricultural standards. which have been developed over the last years. Some of them, other standards are still in progress, and this is part of international efforts to develop arboriculture, to bring together experience from many countries. It's interesting to see that in all the countries we have same challenges, so it's great to share knowledge and share different approaches to solve these problems. So today I would like to relate mainly to tree assessment standard, and here you can see a QR code. There will be another one. So if you can scan this code, it will take you directly to the European Arboricultural Standards website. In the future, we will work on tree valuation and tree protection on construction site standards. In the project, we have 9 partners, and the project will end in 2025. And there will be also national annexes. So talking about tree assessment, the standard basically says what is the best way to perform a task. In this case, we are talking about tree assessment. So possibly it would be best if a group of people would assess trees. I don't think we would come to any conclusion quite soon, as we know that we sometimes differ so much in our judgments and opinions, especially specialists. But for sure, it wouldn't be the most sustainable way of looking at trees, assessing trees, of managing trees. So I'm sure we all had the experience, and maybe we still see some of it still going on, that when it comes to tree assessment, we still see some handwritten reports or handwritten notes in the field, and then rewritten on the computer. Sometimes it leads to have multiple reports for individual trees, because tree officer has changed and he ordered a new report. So there is overlap, there is lack of continuity. Mainly, at least in Poland, but I think it's true to other places as well, that we deal with scan of documents, and I don't think a scan of a document makes it digital, fully digital. And one of the biggest challenges when it comes to working on a larger scale comparable data, we have non-unified parameters. So it differs greatly between different cities and between different countries. So the question is it really history? I don't think so. The experience shows that it's still the case in many places. So I will discuss some things about how we could and should maybe use the data about trees. So tree management, we know that tree management and tree assessment are complex tasks. One of the issues is that it's complex because there is many stakeholders involved, but it's complex because trees are complex in their nature as well. So that doesn't make our life easier. But if we look at the research, we don't make our lives easier either. I would like to encourage you to look at Johan Osberg's work. He did a number of years ago in his PhD program, where he looked at tree inventories, and he wanted to make us some sense of all the data that is out there. And he marked with red 148 parameters. So that was the number of parameters he found in different scientific papers that he did a review of. So we make our work may be more complex if we have too much data, and I will get back to it in a couple of slides. So you can look it up on the internet. That's the title of the book, and the publication that includes all of Johann's research. So there was the results revealed that there is 146 tree parameters. They were later assessed by panelists. It was the panelists also assessed what is the most important parameter. So out of all the parameters, there was only one that scored highest by all groups, and it was scientific name. It was very interesting to see that arborists and city officials differed most. So these who work together on a daily basis, when it comes to collecting tree data, they differed most. Also, scientists and other groups of people were involved. So it tells us something important. And in one of the papers, Johann looked at different cities, what kind of systems, what kind of parameters they use. And there was only two parameters that overlapped all analyzed cities, and there was species, and there was whether it was a street or park tree, and that was it. I believe in the audience, Luke Fay is here. Hello, Luke. And Luke would be able to tell you a lot more about this piece of work. It's very, also here you can scan the QR code and you can go and see the whole document. But in the UK, they did a huge amount of work that took a couple of years to look how data on trees is gathered, what kind of information is gathered, in what systems, and then they also did a public consultation to unify the parameters that are gathered. So have a look at it. I think these two pieces of research are really valuable for our work, and it makes us question some of the principles we apply in our work. So the individual tree data standard in the UK, the outcome is that they have 42 parameters, out of which 5 are required, 10 are recommended, and 27 are optional. And most importantly, they have metadata guidelines. So how the information should be gathered so it can be used and exchanged in the future. So I think it's amazing piece of work, and please have a look and contact the authors if needed. So what we are trying to do here, we are trying to make a very difficult task, because we are trying to translate the body language, so-called body language of trees, into a database code. So, we struggle to understand trees, not to mention translating how they behave and how we describe them, and then code them in different parameters. In the research in the UK, they also cite this rule, FAIR rule, and it's about gathering data in science. And a couple of years ago, European Commission looked at scientific research and whether data that is gathered, whether it's gathered in the right way. And they came to a conclusion that in Europe, in the European Union, at least 10 billion euros could be saved if the data could be used properly. So FAIR means findable. So this data has to be findable for people and for machine. So for a database as well. We tend to deal with text, with long descriptions of trees. but they are quite difficult to manage and to use for IT purposes. The data should be accessible, so it should be available to all the people who need the data, who could use it. I think that's also challenging in our community. Some cities, they don't want to, some tree owners don't want to present all the data on trees. There might be some sensitive data that should be anyway hidden and not freely accessible, but we need to think how we then make the data accessible. Interoperable, so it has to allow exchange between institutions, and of course reusable to allow widest reuse possible. So I would say to sum up this part, I would say let's look at our data, think how it fits this role, and whether we should change any parameters that we use on daily basis. Now I would like to move on to these two catchy phrases: physiological condition and mechanical integrity. I would like to present the approach that is presented in the European standard. And also I would like to share with you the approach that we use in Poland when it comes to the assessment of these two parameters. So physiological condition is basically a parameter that says or deals with the capacity of the tree to keep growing, to keep developing. Very often we monitor trees for public safety reasons. That's the typical approach, that we come and do tree assessment because we worry about public safety. But this parameter is one of the key parameters in the standard to raise the importance of how to look at how the tree is doing. If the tree is not struggling, if we can help the tree to survive, to grow, to develop well. So we also shift a little bit by using this parameter from just looking at safety and risk and hazards into the health or the physiological condition of the tree. And it's related to probability of dieback. Dieback isn't always a bad thing, but we just need to keep an eye on it. And if we lose a tree because it dies too early, and then it goes to the risk of benefit loss. And there is a number of features or symptoms. We don't, in the standard, defect is not mentioned. We don't use this phrase. It's to reflect that many of the things that we see on the trees are perfectly natural for trees, but from our perspective, we might see them as something negative. But we also, when we write about features or symptoms, we say, hold on, they can be negative, but they can be positive as well. So feature is not always a bad thing, and let's forget defect when talking about trees. So mechanical integrity is the reviewed parameter. That's one of the parameters that was quite often used in the past. We looked at it, we tried to review it and update it according to current knowledge and practice. And of course, in simple terms, this parameter says if the tree is going to fall apart or not. So to sum it up, apart from these two parameters, there is a number of other key parameters they are not. They are just described. There is no grading system in the European standard present, and maybe it's not possible to have these two parameters everywhere, and it's going to take some time to introduce it. But let's spread the word. Let's look at the document. Let's review it, and then let's use it. And then our data will be more robust. So why these two parameters? When we looked at how people assess trees, what they are interested in, these were some of the key parameters, or most often mentioned in publications and in research. Using parameters will allow us better data management, and that in turn will lead to better tree management. And of course, although we tend to have detailed description of trees, sometimes it's not as efficient in practical life. To show you a couple examples, in Poland we have a scale for each of the parameter graded 1 to 5. In the European standard, we don't have any scale. It was difficult to. Different countries have different approaches. Some countries have 5-point scale, some prefer 6 points, some prefer 10. So we just gave a general description of the parameters. But maybe it will be possible in the future. Maybe we need to work harder and decide on something. In Poland, because this standard that we created a couple of years ago, it was the first standard, so it was easier to introduce it. So here we have an example that's Tilia cordata. It's in heavy decline, and it's hollow inside, and there's, in general, there is hollowness is not a defect. It might be a very good habitat, but here it was very extensive, and the tree was rated like that in the scale, and as you can imagine, the tree wasn't doing very well. But on the other hand, we can have trees like that. It's habitat tree where physiological condition is very poor, but mechanical integrity might be high. The tree has just gone through pruning, so all the unstable and weak that was removed. It was left on the ground. So mechanical integrity of the tree now is very good, but physiological condition is critical. So I would like to hear more, maybe during discussion, if in your countries you have similar scales, and how do you find using them? But I would like to move on to a case study. So to show you how using different parameters work in practice. So in one of the projects, we analyzed the data and our workflow, how it goes. So the basic assumptions of the project is that we had 10 tree inspectors. We had 30,000 trees assessed. It was in one city, but different sites. We had streets, number of streets, and we had a number of parks. And the software that we used, it was open source, freely available, QGIS and QField. So everyone can use it for free. So it was very interesting to see the outcomes. Now I will look at time, and later I will look at money. So in this tree assessment task, we had a number of, we were asked to look at a number of parameters. All of it was within basic tree assessment. So from the ground, look at individual tree, look from all sides, maybe and use a mallet or probe or simple tools. So both inspection and detailed inspection only differed in the number of parameters that were used. So the first level, the first stage, 37 parameters, this included things like location, date, person who assessed the tree, of course, species, the pH, a number of measurements, also included mechanical integrity and physiological condition rating. And detailed inspection was done later, and it had 93 parameters. So each feature on the tree was assessed, and the different scales were used. So what we can see that a number of trees that a tree inspector on average was able to do, of course, it goes down if you have more parameters. So the time per tree was 7 minutes, around 7 minutes when it comes to inspection. It was very interesting because I think in Germany they have a standard of 7 or 8 minutes per tree. So it was very interesting to see that it's matching. And then the more parameters we had, the more time we had to spend assessing these trees. And it was interesting to see that although we assessed the same tree, just the amount of parameters used made the time longer per parameter. So it takes a lot. It takes longer to go through all the parameters. Some of them overlap, but just to concentrate on them was taking more time. So when it comes to money, I used for our presentation here. I wanted to make it understandable for all of us. So I made the assumption that on average we have 190 work days a year, and average EU wage, I took it from European Commission website, is 33,000 euro. So if we, based on the number of trees that we can assess a day, we can estimate that the number of trees that a tree inspector will be able to assess. And here are the average cost per tree. So the same level of inspection, but just the number of detail that we have, it makes it very a lot more expensive. And the outcome of the case study is that the additional parameters, having additional parameters, had a minimal impact on results. So there was no change in management recommendations. There was no, in most of the cases, initial parameters were not changed. It was still the same. It was done within a couple of months. So it didn't have impact on results. It had quite a good impact on team. So it's interesting to, if we cross-check each other and for self-referencing, it's a very good tool, but maybe we need to be more efficient and work within our teams and not just to use the data that we don't need. And the last point is to say, if we had so many parameters, but the result hasn't changed, is it worth doing it? And if we would transfer the number of the amount of time and money that we had for the detailed inspection, we could assess more trees, and you can translate that to your own circumstances that you have back at home. So I think it's important to look at the parameters that we use them wisely. And I would like to all of you to ask to visit European arboriculture standards website. There is a draft of the document published for public opinion. So please share your opinion on that. Please have a look at it. Also, I think we all, and within our team, we also should evaluate and analyze the data that we collect. Why do we need this data? And do we really need all the parameters that we think we do? And lastly, I would like to share it with your colleagues and think how we can work within our teams, but also internationally, to bring the knowledge together. Maybe learn from recent process in the UK when they had the discussion on the standard. And that's the QR code that will take you to European arboricultural standards. And thank you very much.
Amazing, Kamil. Thank you for your enriching presentation. We will continue with our second presentation. Our second speaker is Ondrej Kolarik. Ondrej is a CEO and co-founder of Arbor Technologies, where he has been focused on product management of our flagship product Adbian. He has a degree in innovation management in business from the Czech Technical University in Prague. He has a passion for data-driven approaches in tree management, and his work is centered on using modern technologies to ensure the safety and longevity of trees.
Thanks, Alex, for introduction. Thank you, Kamil, for a great presentation, and thanks to everyone who decided to spend the time with us. I'm really humbled with the numbers we get today. So thank you for coming. So my presentation is on unlocking insights through 3D scanning and Adbian's vision for arboriculture. Kamil showed some examples from the past, how the data was collected, what parameters, and I would like to show you how the future might look like. Definitely we are not sure about that, but we think there could be something on it. I will let you to make your own opinion. But I usually like to start my presentation with why it's important what we are doing and why is tree care as an industry getting more and more important every year, I would say. And it's simply because we have a new record every year. But today we're not going to talk about the good ones, but rather about the bad ones, because we have higher temperature every year, record droughts and record temperature in cities. And especially in cities, adult trees can be actually one of a few tools municipalities have to mitigate these problems. So I think trees are getting more important, and the whole tree care industry as well. But what people are often not realizing is that not all the trees work the same. So I took data from ecobenefits.cz to compare adult tree and its cooling effect. So I came up with a number that to replace one adult tree's cooling effect, you would need to plant more than 1,400 newly planted trees in the same year to balance out its effect. So this is definitely not an option in a city. And also why people are planting often is connected with CO2 emissions, because tree can store CO2 in its wood. But this study, tree survival rate, is discussing that every tree has its own carbon footprint, especially when you are planting in a city, because trees are planted in tree nurseries, then transported for sometimes hundreds of kilometers on a truck and put on a place. And this study shows that it takes 30 to 40 years until tree breaks even on its own CO2 emission. And when you put it into context with that average age of trees in cities is just around 30 years, especially in a downtown and in the centers, you will soon realize that planting a trees is maybe not the best options, because you can make this problem even worse by planting and taking enough care of the tree. So that's, I would say, why the arboriculture would be more and more interesting, or having a global impact, because it's ensuring the health and safety of trees. Every day mature and valuable trees are being cut down, either from lacking data, lacking precision, or unskilled workers, and so on. So we are hoping that we can contribute to solving this problem with our technology, with our software. Many of you have heard about Adbian before, but for those who didn't, the basic concept is that we are working with calibrated photographies and 3D scans to model the tree in 3D space and calculate its biomechanical stability based on wind load, based on its taxonomy, and many more parameters. We will get into greater detail. But the grand vision of what we are building is that we want to create the tool for daily use for collecting advanced tree data. We would like to, or we are developing what you can think of is a device test without any need for additional expensive hardware. It can be often a barrier for a tree consultant to buy a hardware such as tomography or pulling test for a tree inspection. So we are trying to build something you can only use on your phone without any additions. And we are trying definitely enhance the know-how of the experts, not to replace them with technology, which is often the case in other industries. Also, the goal is definitely to dramatically reduce the adult tree cutting. From the case studies we've been able to collect, it looks like we could potentially save up to 1/3 of adult tree cutting. And this is supported by a recent award of Ministry of Interior we've get for saving several trees, several tens of trees here in Brno. So I hope this technology can in the future uphold these promises and can be useful for tree cutting prevention, while reducing the risk coming from the trees. So to better understand the concept, it's important to understand where we started and where we are going with this solution. So we created biomechanical tool, or a tool to assess biomechanics. Adbian is short for Advanced Biomechanical Analysis. So it's definitely coming from the calculation. And the biomechanics is a tree stability based on its physical properties. And the core principles of biomechanics are risk mitigation and prevention of unnecessary tree removal or tree felling. So it's definitely checks all the boxes with our goal. And the biomechanics stand of triangle of stability, which tells you that there is some load, in this case wind load, which is influencing a structure, which is a tree. And the structure can react with its material, what properties, or how the material is composed in the structure. And that's where we are adding the most value, because we are able to assess the geometry much more precisely with technology than other technologies in the market, I would say. So you might know several ways to get a safety factor or to assess the biomechanical stability of trees, such as WLA method or SIA, or tree calc, which is a tool that uses the SIA principles. We are coming from the same basic principles, but we are trying to think of it as a new generation of the calculations. And as I said, we can model the tree using different inputs, different parameters, more precisely in 4 different levels. I will take you through all the 4 levels and show you how we do that. So for a first level, it's coming with very basic parameters such as coordinates, tree species, DBH, tree height, stem height, and crown dimensions, which every tree care specialist should collect or tree owner should have about their trees. And from that, we are able to build very simple 3D model with a shape of a crown based on its taxonomy, where the cut through the stem is a circle. So there is not much improvement in geometry calculation, or I would say non-improvement, but there is improvement in the scalability, because you can export hundreds of trees at once and get a 3D model and calculation for each level of them. So this is very simple first level or first use case. So with the second level, we used photography analysis, so it can really be integrated in your phone to increase accuracy, for which we developed our own mobile app that enables you to get the measurements from each height of the tree on the stem. The inputs are only tree species, coordinates, and 2 photos of the whole tree from different angles, and 3 photos of the stem from different angles. So from these data, we are able to reconstruct how the tree looks and what are the parameters of the tree. It might look easier than it actually was to accomplish this. Just to quickly demonstrate you, if you have your phones or your smartphones next to you, just try to open the camera and click on the zoom out or the 0.5 lens or different lens. If you don't have it in your phone, try it with normal camera. But if you point on a different objects in your room and place the object in a corner or in a center or in a different corner, you can realize that they are changing the parameters or the perspective of how large they appear to be on the screen. And that's something that is the lens distortion. So every phone has a unique lens and is uniquely distorted, and with a different shape of lens, you see different perspective of the objects. So just look at the tree in the behind. It's from the same distance, but with different lenses. So this was just one of many problems we had to overcome to be able to calculate anything from the photography. And we did it by a calibration process, where before you start using the app, you just take pictures of a chessboard from different angles, and then we can calculate for it with each photography you take afterwards. So this is just one technicality we had to overcome before. There is also different types of the distortion. Also, your phone can be tilted when you are taking the picture, and so on. And these are all the things that are coming to the calculation and the compensation for the calculation. So based on this data, we are able to get the 3D model a little bit more precisely, where the cut through the stem is no circle anymore, and we calculate the tree stability every 10 centimeters. And I would say there is already improvement in geometry than other calculation of biomechanics on the market. And when we wanted to get even more precise, we started to implementing 3D scans. Fortunately, you don't need any additional hardware for that right now, because Apple decided to implement LiDAR sensor in their in iPhones and iPad Pros. So the inputs are the same as level 2 plus scan of a stem. The scan can look like this. And as you can see, you can get the 3D model very precisely, 3D scan of the trunk. Which can again improve the detail of the calculation. So this is how the 3D scan is collected. You just come to the tree, point your phone at the tree, and start collecting and getting rid of these colorful points. This video might be lagging a little bit, so I will just skip it for now. And yes, this I would say can get you the maximal detail of geometry, at least on a stem for now, to calculate the stability. So based on these inputs, we can model the tree including open cavities. So cavities when you can put your hand with your phone inside and scan it from the inside, and calculate the baseline biomechanical stability. When we wanted to go even more into detail, we started combining it with device tests, such as Picus tomography or FACOP tomography, and we are trying to implement Arbotom as well right now. So the inputs are right now the same as level 3 plus tomography outputs. And the tomography, for those who doesn't know it, it can tell you how the tree looks from the inside, if there is any cavity or decayed wood, but it's not exactly very precise on the outside. And the paradox is that the outside wood has significantly more potential of holding the tree in a place. It's also how the tree compensates for its own stability. So the outside wood is, I would say, much more important than the inside. And as Kamil said, the cavity doesn't have to be a problem. It can be a feature for the tree or for other organisms around. So I have here a case study from Netherlands just to illustrate how big the difference can be. So on the left we have tomogram, and on the right we have cut through the 3D model in the same height. And when we overlap it, you can see they are not exactly matching. And the difference was quite extensive because we calculated that there was 18% of healthy wood that tomography was ignoring. So I would say even 1% of the wood could make a huge difference to the safety coefficient, but 80% was quite a big difference. So these are the 4 levels of Adbian, or of how we use the technology right now. But how does it work in your practice in data collection and tree evaluation? So the basic data it gives you is the safety factor. It's coming from SIA, so it's same principle. If it's below 100, the tree is considered unstable. If it's between 100 and 150%, it's somewhere in the gray zone. And anything above 150 should be considered stable. So we calculate this number, plus we calculate how this number will increase when you prune the tree. Right now for 1, 2, 3 meters, but in the new reports, we are calculating for both percentages and meters on the given tree. And the other use case is detecting device test inaccuracies, which I talked about. I have here a few more case studies. This one is from Brno, and it is a tree with open cavity where there was a tomography done by the tree expert just below and above the open cavity. So we recompensated for the real geometry on the outside, because on the inside, the tomography is probably more precise because of the decayed wood and so on. And we still could add like 11% of healthy wood in this case, but the tree was stable in these points. The interesting part was that we find that the tree is weakest, not in the 10 centimeters and 120 centimeters where the tomography was done, but the tree was weakest at 2 meter 30, because the tree cavity was quite extent, and it was getting bigger above, and the cavity was going all the way up to 3 meters 30. So the interesting about this was that the geometrical analysis can also indicate where is the place you should do the tomography to say if the tree is stable or not. In some cases, in others, you can get pretty good idea even without this. So another case study is a tree from Budapest. It's one of the oldest trees in the city center, and it's completely hollow from the inside. The open cavity is covered because there was some homeless guys trying to live inside there, so they had to put this cage. But we've been able to get in and to scan it from the inside. And again, in this case, there was tomography done at the base, where we calculated the tree was completely stable. There was a risk that the tree could be felled, or that they would have to prune it quite a bit to become stable again. But we indicated that the weakest point was 2.30 meters in this case. There was another tomography done in that height, which we assessed was again quite stable even with the reserves. So the tree is standing there without any pruning and without any stability concerns. So yeah. But yes, I think I'm a big fan of also a business sustainability when you coming with something new. And I think that the trend where the arboriculture industry is going is to doing more analysis and less tree cutting. But more analysis doesn't have to be, as Kamil mentioned, more parameters, because technology can do it for you. So it doesn't have to increase the time of data collection dramatically. And on a small case study we did was that we find out that cutting and replacing an adult tree can cost you more than 2,800 euros, because you have to fell the tree, dispose it, you have to get level it with the ground, then you can do some compensation planting, then you have to take care of that tree, and after 10 years you have a just 10-year-old tree compared to 100-year-old tree, for example. So the tree cutting can be the most expensive thing you can do. So if you are able to reduce the tree cutting recommendation, it's the best for the municipality from financial perspective as well. And for the tree expert, you can definitely charge more for doing so. Things that we are definitely working on, it's not yet as user-friendly as possible. You need around 2-3 hours to learn with it, to set it up on your phone, but we have a plan to reduce it to around 25 minutes, and you need to go through 45-minute onboarding to learn how to work with the technology. So there are definitely some drawbacks. That's why we didn't release this to the public yet, or to the market. We are right now working with around 120 pilot users around Europe, and we did the last analysis, the level 4, on more than 1,000 trees by now. So we are still fine-tuning it in and so on. So that's where we are right now with the technology. So what are the next steps for us? We are developing the product since 2018 approximately. We are pilot testing it since 2021. And we are preparing to release it slowly on some European markets when it makes sense, and when we see that it can really add the value to the tree consultants and to the municipalities. Plus, there is we see quite big interest from USA and from Asia as well. So, if we are successful in Europe, we could go abroad afterwards. Yeah. So that's all for my presentation today. But as Alex said, please stay in touch with us on socials, and you can also book a call with us under this QR code, where we can discuss this in greater details. Also, if you want to become our pilot users, you can also set up call with us. If you can forgive us small user unfriendliness at the beginning and a few drawbacks, we would like to have you on board to test it on as many trees as possible before we release the software. Drawbacks, we would like to have you on board. That would be it. As many trees as possible before we release.
Thank you, Ondrej, for sharing your presentation with us. I think now is space for questions. How do you deal with the problem that trees are able to alter their wood properties on a cellular level? The effect of this alteration can have a substantial effect on strength and flexibility, or don't you take the alteration in wood properties in account?
Yes, thanks for the questions. Right now we are working mostly with defined wood material properties from the Stuttgart table, and we are enriching them for our own research on a local university. So this is definitely a question of future development, and I agree that even within the trees, the wood material properties can differ quite a bit, and that this can be this can be studied further, and this is also like the way to we want to lead the research in the biomechanical biomechanical research on this, because if there is no financial incentive in doing so, there is simply wouldn't take too long. So we want to start with the enriching the current state of things with a precise geometry, and then in the future adding more parameters and add complexity with the technology.
I think here is another one. You mentioned that very soon will be possibility to include it into analysis data from our bottom. Is it right?
Yes, we are working on it. Hopefully this year.
Kamil, can I ask you? There were some questions you already answered in the chat. Maybe if you want to go deeper in the topic, or...
Hello, Gerard and Nev and Luke. Yeah, Gerard asked a question if both turns were done by the same people. So we have the same group of people, but we tried to exchange people. So one tree is visited by two different people, but within the same team. That was done, and it's not to say it clearly, it's not a study and it's not research, but it's just a practical observation and the thing that we observed.
Okay, thank you for your clarification. I meant what was meant by advanced evolution in Kamil's data.
It's not the advanced assessment in the European standard is beyond, is something like a climbing inspection. It's something like detailed soil analysis or something where you need additional skills and knowledge and so on. So the two levels, maybe level is not a good term, because it's the same level, but we had to come back, and the city, they called it two levels. So level 1 and level 2, and it just differed in the number of parameters used. So we had the same tools, same people, same skills and knowledge, so same assessment level. It's just the number of details that we had to put in was different. So we in the second one, all sorts of parameters that you would come across, like the stem lean, VU shape fork, which is I would say greatly out of date now, but still in practical use, and so on and so on. Did I, James, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think you answered the question very well. From James, hi Ondrej, an Adbian calculation requires GPS signal to locate the user when taking photos, but these signals can be unreliable. particularly when under trees. Have you considered the possibility of manually entering users' position?
Yes, thanks for the questions. As any new technology, even we have like several setbacks and several limitations, and this is just one of them. When you are working in an area without the internet signal, it's hard to get the location of the tree precisely. I think this is the problem with many GIS solutions as well. But yeah, we are definitely thinking of a possibility of downloading the map in advance, for example. But it's always the user who's putting the dot in the map where the tree is standing and showing us from which directions he's taking the picture. So even though the GPS can be unreliable, you can quite clearly on a map see where you are standing and the opposite of tree. Based on other trees around, based on the buildings, roads, and etc. So yes, definitely one of the limitations, but I think solvable in the future.
I think we can end the section for Q&A, and I will shortly introduce the next webinar that will take place on October 21st or 31st, sorry. I would like to share with you our next guest, Gerard Passola, for our second webinar. The topic will be Tree Biomechanics Unveiled, exploring the latest developments. Gerard, I saw you're present on this webinar, so hello. I would like to quickly introduce Gerard. He's expert in the field of arboriculture on a global scale, so we are very excited to have you on our next webinar. And I already posted the event on Facebook where you can register. I will also share them on other social media, so don't hesitate to register as soon as possible, so we can discuss the topics already even before the webinar. And I would like to thank you all for joining us today. It was a pleasure to be here with you all, and with Kamil and Ondrej, I would like to thank you both again. It was super interesting and nice experience.